Women are powerful creators. The Align Women podcast features female entrepreneurs, leaders, and other professional women who've demonstrated agency and innovation in their personal and professional lives. I'm your host, Amy Evans. I have authentic, intimate conversations with my guests that highlight their paths to success, their struggles and accomplishments, and the things that currently excite, motivate, and inspire them to turn their visions into reality. Welcome to the Align Women podcast. I'm Amy Evans, your host and the founder of Align Women, a leadership and networking organization for professional women. This podcast features female entrepreneurs, leaders, and other professional women who've demonstrated agency and innovation in their personal and professional lives. And with me today is my good friend, Meredith Bell. She's the co-founder and president of Performance Support Systems, which creates and administers assessment and performance tools for leaders and their teams. She's also the host of the Strong for Performance podcast, where she gives coaches and consultants practical tips for taking their businesses to the next level. And on a personal note, she is an incredibly kind and generous super connector and someone that I look up to as I continue my leadership journey. Welcome to the podcast, Meredith.
Amy, thank you. And I appreciate your kind words.
Well, you have been such an influence on me, and I'm so excited to share you with the Align Women audience and ask you some questions about things you and I haven't talked about before, although when we get on a call, we can talk and talk and talk. So I want to start with Strong for Performance, since that's your business and it has been your business for a very long time. And one of the things that I was reading in preparing for this podcast was something that makes your program different is that it really helps people to build new habits. And so rather than going to a conference and hearing someone speak about all the things that you should be doing differently, or reading a book about all the things that you should be doing differently, and then going back and slipping into the same habits that you've been conditioned to be in for a long time, your program teaches something different, approaches it in a different way. And I want to hear more about that.
Oh, great. Yes, this came from our own experience as consultants and trainers, and also just work with clients who've used our other software tool over the years, that training alone as an event, or, even as a series of a sequence of days, does not cause the brain to get rewired for a new behavior. And that's what's really required. That's why people say it takes 21, 30, 60, whatever number of days. It doesn't happen overnight. And so what happens in many training programs is people go, they get excited, they say, yes, I want to do it this way. And then when they get in a situation where they have to use the skill, they revert back to what is familiar and comfortable. And so we set out to create a program that would really make a difference. And we call it an online coaching and development tool because it combines key elements that are really required to help the brain rewire itself. And one of them is simply practice. And the way that many online learning programs work is you go, you consume some content, and then you get asked knowledge questions. Right. Which is unfortunately how our school systems work too often. And instead, what we do when let me back up. We have content around communication skills and what we call core strengths, behavior patterns you need to engage when you face adversity or a challenge, like perseverance or courage or composure. And so we have content there for people to go through. But then one of the key differences is we ask them questions about what ideas they got that'll be useful and how they're going to apply it back on the job within the next 48 hours. And so we're looking for them to make a commitment. And then they go out to actually look for opportunities to use it and later log back into the program and reflect on how it went. So it's taking away the lessons from the experience that's part of building those pathways in the brain about the better way to do it. So that repetition of focusing on one skill, taking action, then reflecting, that cycle helps to build those pathways in the brain. But that alone is challenging for someone to do when they're trying to make a change. And that's why programs like Weight Watchers and 12-step programs are so popular, because you don't do it alone. You've got support. And so we've built in this coaching network that is comprised of at least one person as the accountability coach and other support coaches. Because when you're going to make a change, it's really helpful to have somebody that's going to hold your feet to the fire, and you need to answer to. So there's a minimum of the one accountability coach, and then you can add other coaches. And then the third piece is getting feedback. So there's an easy way to ask for feedback. Basically, how am I doing? What Marshall Goldsmith calls feed forward. So it's getting people to suggest, what are some ways you'd like to see me improve in this area? So not looking backwards, but looking ahead. So those three things of getting the practice, taking time to reflect, then having coaching and getting feedback are what make ours different. That combination of elements is unique.
And since you shared all that, tell me about what your ideal client looks like when it comes to this program. Where do you see success in applying this program?
Well, first of all, you've got to have an internal champion. We've had many consultants and coaches use this with their clients, but there still needs to be someone inside the organization who believes in this process and says, this makes sense. This is what we're going to do. And so an open-minded individual who really understands learning is not an event that you send people to and then they come back transformed. So that's a key thing. And then, of course, the actual individual participants need to have an open mind and be willing to make a commitment to log into the program regularly, to be practicing this. So using the program itself is a new habit that they have to form. But that's really the key. It can be used with all different levels and ages. And so there's not a demographic that way. It's more of a mindset of a learner who's open and willing to learn new things and then try them and not get upset if they don't do it perfectly the first time and give up.
Well, and that's part of developing the habit is trying it and sort of forming the new grooves in your brain that say, oh, there's another way to do this other than the familiar, comfortable way, which often is not the most productive or effective way.
Well, and the other challenge there and why having a coach is so critical is when you first think of somebody that's like Tiger Woods when he was trying to change his, I think it was his putt. He got worse before he got better. Yeah. Because the old way is competing with the new way. And so it's like neither one is working very well. So recognizing that that's a natural part of the learning process can help a person be more patient in just knowing, okay, it's going to feel a little weird for a little while until I get the hang of this.
Yeah, a little bit awkward. All of that makes so much sense to me based on what I've read about developing habits and growing as a leader, especially that concept. And you mentioned Marshall Goldsmith, and one of his seminal books is "What Got You Here Won't Get You There," and the idea that even as leaders, the habits that we learn that help us to be successful early in our careers are often habits that do not do us any service later in our careers. And learning to untangle those habits is really important. So I can see how a system like yours would be very useful in actually creating meaningful change, which I think is what you're looking for.
Exactly. The goal is improving performance, right? Improving the way we do things and the results that we get. So that's key.
I want to shift to focus on you for a second. One of the things I really admire about you is, well, many things I admire about you. One of the things I really like is the way that you approach a new relationship. You have a very unique mindset when it comes to entering into a new relationship, communicating with somebody and establishing a relationship. And I want to hear a little bit more about kind of how you got to that point and what that practice is like for you as you get ready to communicate with a new human.
So, those are all such good questions. And as you were saying, how I got to this point, I immediately flashed back to what I used to do a long time ago, which was talk too much about myself,
Mm.
And hope something there that I said would resonate with the person.
Right.
And over the years, I've realized the best thing I can do is think about how I can be of service to the person. And so, honestly, I take that Amy Cuddy stance, of standing up in the superwoman pose. And what I say before a conversation is first, I say two things. I say, I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad you're here. I know my stuff. That's the first thing. That's something I read a long time ago, before you speak. But the other thing I say is, how can I be of such service to this person that the conversation is a profound experience for them? And, another way to say that is, how can I serve this person so powerfully they never forget our conversation the rest of their lives? That's a question that I got from the book, The Prosperous Coach, and several years ago. And it just leaped off the page. It was my favorite sentence in the book, because it made me realize I could take this idea of service to an incredibly higher level. And because to have that kind of conversation that people don't forget, you can't be talking about yourself. So the way I approach the conversation is one of curiosity, asking genuine questions that evolve organically, not having some pre-scripted thing, that I follow, but just getting to know them. And as I listen to them, I've been such an avid learner and reader my whole life. And so as I'm listening to someone talk about their work, or, where they are, my brain starts cooking on, what resources do I know about that might be helpful to them? And so I don't interrupt them, but I might make a note of it, or I'll just remember it. And so at the right time, I can say, hey, I've got something I'd like to send you that I think would be useful for you. Or I know someone you need to talk to that would be just a great person for you to know. And when you take genuine joy, as I do, from connecting people that you think really ought to know each other, to me, it's like a way of spreading light in the world, and really, keeping things glowing and a spark. And so that's to me joyful. And so I'm not looking at, when can I talk about my products? And, that kind of thing. Some things evolve naturally, where people will then ask me about, what we do and what we're excited about. And there's an opportunity to say what we do. But often, if I'm really listening carefully, there may be a really natural fit for what we do, or something that we have. So I never go into it thinking I need to make a sale. I want to form a relationship here and be of service to this person in whatever form that takes. And it always works. It's not a magic. Well, I guess it is magic in a way. It's not a mystery. It's not complicated. Right. It's just having that focus truly on that other person. And, one of the things that's a benefit of doing that, Amy, is then I'm not preoccupied with myself. And thinking about, how am I coming across, or anything like that. I am just fully present with them, and they feel it. They know it. And that is rare, I've learned. Most people are waiting for their turn to talk. They're eager to get in there and tell the person about this or that. And I'm very patient, and I'm because of where my focus is. And people sense that. They can tell.
The people that I've spoken with who have that ability to make you feel like you are the only person in the room, I can count on one hand in my life. They're magical humans. So to cultivate that ability, I think is very meaningful. And the thing that stands out about what you described to me is the preparation that you do. And I think that's what makes you unique. I know many women who are amazing super connectors and who are very generous with their time and very generous with their resources. What sets you apart to me is the preparation that you do, which only takes a moment or two prior to getting on a call. But those questions that you ask yourself, I think are really what sets your process apart and impress me so much about the way that you approach it.
Well, you mentioned the word preparation, but another way that I prepare with someone who's a new connection is I will review their LinkedIn profile. I'll take a look at their website to see if they have, an about me page or learn a little bit about them, because I can go in cold, but I'd rather have some background about them that then can help me bring some questions to the table. And again, a lot of people don't do that. And so when I ask a question that shows I've taken the time to learn about them, they're usually surprised. Oh, you read that. So it's just one more way to set yourself apart by being prepared.
So communication skills are, I'm sure people have picked up on the fact that this is something that's important to you, something that you cultivate in yourself, which obviously makes you a great teacher when it comes to passing that wisdom on. And you have a book called Connect with Your Team, Mastering the Top 10 Communication Skills. So I want to talk about that book for a minute. That one is on my book list for 2021. Feedback is, I believe it's 2 of the 10 communication skills, because giving feedback is one and receiving feedback is the other. And I know you and I have talked about this in the past, and I want to hear your thoughts around how giving feedback in a specific way and receiving feedback in a specific way improves your communication skills.
Well, you know what? We actually have 3 chapters, because we have another one on expressing appreciation, which is basically giving positive feedback. Mm-hmm. And so I think a key thing with receiving feedback as well as giving constructive feedback is not letting your ego get in the way. Mm-hmm. Because especially on the receiving side, we want to justify, defend ourselves, explain. If somebody points out something we did, it's like, I can't appear to be imperfect, right? So there's that desire to jump in and defend ourselves. But if we take a whole different approach where we thank the person for bringing this to our attention, because usually if somebody's giving us constructive feedback, we've had a blind spot about it. We didn't know. And so they're really giving us a gift. So if we can shift the way we think about it as an opportunity to learn instead of a criticism or put down of me, it makes a huge difference to the person giving us feedback in the future too, because that's a key thing. If we shut somebody down, we're not going to learn anything, and then they're not going to feel safe coming to us again in the future. So we want to set the stage, set our ego aside to thank the person. And I, apologize if it's something we did that was hurtful to them, either in what we did or what we said. If it had a negative impact on them, then we need to be willing to own up to it. And too many folks are afraid that if I apologize, I'll appear weak. When in fact, a person respects you more when you're willing to own up to something you did. And they'll get past it a lot faster. And so just apologize and even say, is there something you'd like me to do to make it right? In case, there is something, because they'll probably be shocked that you would ask that. Because most people don't, right? Right. And make a commitment too, I want to improve in this. So when you see me doing this in the future, please, hold it up to me and remind me of what I committed to do. And then remember later to ask the person, how am I doing in this area? I know I said I was going to commit to improve. Have you seen any difference? So that they know you really paid attention to that feedback.
Yeah. And that I think I'm gonna take that in a little different direction, because I think that ties in beautifully to the other book that you and I were talking about regarding peer coaching. Yes. And the concept of having somebody that you can really entrust with with that kind of relationship where you can go to somebody and say, look, I really want to work on this skill. I'm having trouble here. I'd really appreciate it if when we're in a meeting together, you could keep an eye on how I'm communicating this way, and maybe even, if you see me doing it, give me a little ear tug. And I'd really be interested in having your feedback around that. And another word that comes up often when you speak, holding me accountable for that, because it's something that I want to improve. So tell me how peer coaching fits into that process.
Right. So two people can coach each other. Let's say they both want to work on a skill. In fact, we wrote this book, Peer Coaching Made Simple, as a companion to the one on the 10 communication skills, because it's hard to change skills on your own. So the idea is to set the stage for accountability by agreeing to certain things. And we provide some of those parameters in the book in terms of agreeing on how often you'll meet, where you'll meet, and how you're going to structure the conversation. But basically, it's setting a time to report back on instances where you've applied the skill and how it went. And so you get support from the other person. And like you said, if they work with you and they're seeing you in action, they may have some input, additional ideas for you, but that's not a requirement for somebody to be your peer coach. It could just be someone you're going to be talking to on a regular basis about what you've done. And then they're going to apply some of those skills like listening and giving you encouragement if you have had some setbacks and things didn't go as well. We've got tips on how to encourage someone so they stay on track and don't give up and don't get so discouraged they say it's not worth trying to do this. So those are some of the key elements. It's knowing you're not by yourself and you've got support.
That's so important. Back to what you said about not letting your ego get in the way when you're receiving feedback. And that's a very primal response when someone says something negative about me, because I don't want to be excommunicated from the tribe. That's a very primal response that we as humans have. So creating a relationship where you've got somebody that you can sort of entrust to look at the maybe not so admirable parts and encourage you and provide alternatives and be a sounding board is such a valuable way to grow. And I love that you're bringing attention to the idea of peer coaching. It's something I've only just recently started hearing about, although I'm sure it's existed for a long time. But I love that you have a way to bring more attention and practical, applicable skills to that.
Well, here's the thing. Everybody in an organization needs coaching. We all do, right? We all have areas where we want to learn and grow, but they can't bring in an executive coach or a leadership coach for everybody in the organization. So we got to thinking peer coaching is a way that everybody can benefit from having a coach. And of course, as they learn how to coach another person, that's really another leadership skill, personal leadership skill that everybody is learning how to use. And it really builds a coaching culture around, the whole environment in the workplace. But the other cool thing is those same skills transfer very well at home. Yeah. So with your spouse, with your kids, these are, easily transferable skills. And we've had people say, golly, I just found that, I'm so much better listening to my wife or my husband. And so that to me is very rewarding to see a ripple effect, not just in the workplace, but when someone rewires their brain, it doesn't have to be situational. It's usually widespread everywhere.
For sure. So tell me of the 10 communication skills that your book is about mastering. Which one do you feel like you've struggled with the most in your life?
Well, probably resolving conflict, because I grew up in a very loving home, but my parents never really disagreed in front of us, and we didn't learn how to disagree, so it was more repressing or stuffing and just not speaking up about it. So it took me a while to get past the, what's somebody going to think? Will they not like me? All those rejection fears, like you say, from the tribe.
Right.
That having to learn how to speak up for myself doesn't mean I'm being belligerent or, aggressive. It's just learning how to be more assertive. That was probably the thing that, took me the longest time to really, and I haven't mastered it. I'm a work in progress. We all are. I've, been teaching or using these communication skills for over 30 years, but there are times I still interrupt or my mind wanders. And so it's a constant learning. And I'm very lucky because my two business partners and I have worked together for 30 years and we know these skills well. And so we remind each other, we're really good peer coaches to each other. When one of us interrupts, the other one will say, I really wasn't done yet. And so, we can speak up and be honest about what's going on with us in any given moment. And that helps a lot.
For sure. So I want to wrap up with a question I like to ask all my guests, which is, what do you still want to accomplish?
Amy, there is still too much pain in the world and in the workplace around communication or poor communication. And so we are passionate about getting our books in the hands of 1 million people because we were motivated to do this by Ken Blanchard, who gave us a wonderful quote for this book. And he said, "Thanks, Denny and Meredith, because of your book, thousands of teams will communicate at a higher level." And so that's what I'm really driven to do. We want to get these books in the hands of a lot of people because we know what a difference having better communication skills makes in the way people connect with each other, how they get along. And so we want to foster healthy cultures, healthy families in the way people interact. So that's a lifelong, purpose that I have to assist with that.
Well, we will link both of the books in the show notes so that we can do our contribution to your 1 million book goal. I know I get counted as one because I have your Mastering 10, the communication skills book. So I'm excited about that. And we'll make those links available to everyone who visits the podcast. Where can people reach you if they want to get in touch with you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn the most, although I'm also on Facebook and Twitter. So those are my main social media platforms. And my email address is meredith@growstrongleaders.com. And they can find my podcast on that website also.
Perfect. And we will link all of that below as well so that you can reach out to Meredith in any way that feels comfortable for you. Thank you so much for being on the Align Women podcast today, Meredith. I really appreciate sharing this time with you.
Oh, I love being with you, Amy. I always enjoy our conversations, and I appreciate you and the fantastic work you're doing in the world.
Thank you. It was great to have you. And look for more conversations with more amazing women at alignwomenpodcast.com. Thanks for listening to the Align Women podcast. You can find more episodes with more amazing women at alignwomenpodcast.com. And visit alignwomen.org to learn more about our leadership and networking organization. This is Amy Evans, and you've been listening to the Align Women podcast.